On today's Technique Tuesday, I'm going to show you how you can use your DAW in the same way that I use my SSL desk. Right, let's go have a look. Right, so I'm sat in my mixer's chair, which is probably not that dissimilar to how you're sat at home next to your mixing desk. And I'm going to show you how you can use your DAW. In this case, I'm using Pro Tools, and use it in a similar way routing-wise like you would do with a mixing desk. So in terms of your preamp, your EQ, your compression, and stuff like that. So it's teaching you a workflow that is similar to using hardware, which is the background that I grew up with. So let's go to Pro Tools and I'll show you the session. So we've got a lead vocal here.
Save your breath. Oh, won't you save your breath for me?
So with this, imagine you've just recorded it with your interface. And so it's a nice clean interface. That's the one good thing at the moment, is that cheap interfaces tend to produce clean, quiet results, which, to be honest, is pretty much all you need. Yes, having a Neve 1073 or an SSL 4000G series preamp or a variety of others would be wonderful, but with the advent of plugins and stuff like that and emulations, just having a nice, clean, quiet Behringer preamp or one on a PreSonus interface or something like that will be perfectly fine. So I'm going to bring up to here. So let's start, and we're going to talk about this and think about this logically. So if you were to take your microphone, even though we've recorded it, we're going to go through the process in our mind again. So first of all, we would start off, it would be going through a preamp and an EQ possibly. So I'm going to use a plugin that gives me a preamp and also an EQ. So in this case, I'm using the Sheps 73, which is based on Andrew Sheps 1073 preamp and EQ. So you'll see here we have our preamp and we have a 3-band EQ, we have a high-pass filter, and we got the ability to adjust our input levels and output levels. So with the preamp, it doesn't change the gain, it just changes the harmonics that would be produced if we were, say, for example, had it at 40 dB of gain. So I'm going to increase this, and it will add basically that colorization that would be applied with the real plugin. Sorry, the real preamp. So let's put that on.
Save your breath. Oh, won't you save your breath for me? There's only us that I can see.
I'm going to turn the reverb off. So if I was going to use a real preamp, I would probably, for a vocal, I'd probably keep it about 40 dB, maybe 35. But in this case, I'm going to stick to 40 dB because that's, again, how much nominal preamp gain I would be adding. And now we can kind of add EQ as if we were adding it at the recording process.
Save your breath. Oh, won't you save your breath for me? There's only us that I can see. Take a look. Oh, take a look inside my heart.
So adding a little bit around 700, a bit around 220. I'm using this as a sculpting EQ to kind of get the sound I would want. You'll notice that I've boosted. So as I've boosted it, I've also increased the signal level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the output level so we are not just hearing a difference in volume.
Save your breath.
If I bypass it,
oh, won't you save your breath for me? There's only us that I can see.
So using this plugin, I've added preamp harmonics, I've added a 3-band 1073 EQ, and I've also used a high-pass filter, and then I've dropped the volume because all my EQ settings have increased the level. If I'd cut, then I would be increasing this. So that's the first part. Okay, in a typical session, what would you add after that? Well, most people would probably add a compressor. So I'm going to use a CLA 1076 compressor. I'm going to set the release really fast. And now with the 1073, the 1 is the slowest and 7 is the fastest. And it would be the same for the attack. So it's kind of back to front. So I'm going to bring this in.
Save your breath. Oh, won't you save your breath for me? There's only yours that I can see. Take a look, oh, take a look inside my heart.
Again, with this, you don't have a threshold with the 1176, you just have an input and an output fader, and the threshold is fixed. By increasing the input level, you are going to send more signal over the threshold point, but that's obviously made the signal louder. So using the output means I can bring that level back down. So again, I'm not hearing a difference in volume. I want the volume to be the same whether the effect is on or off, so that way I actually hear what the effect is doing.
Save your breath, oh, won't you save your breath for me? There's only yours that I can see.
So far in our recording stroke mixing chain, I've used a preamp and an EQ, and then I put into, excuse me, a compressor. So imagine that as the signal going in, that's the signal you would have recorded. And now, usually when something has been recorded, it then gets played back. In the old days, it would have got played back via tape and would have gone into the tape returns on a desk. And then you would mix it and monitor it through a mixing desk. So we're going to do that as well. So we're going to use the CLA Mix Hub because it gives us all the things that you would find on a mixing desk. So we have our filters, we have our trim for our input levels, we have a 4-band EQ, and we have another compressor and a fader. So with this, I can EQ the signal in relation to everything else that's playing. Whereas with this one, I used the EQ to get the sound I wanted, and I probably would have done that soloed. But with this, I don't really want it solo because I want to mix the sound to fit with the other tracks or other components within the song.
Save your breath, oh, won't you save your breath for me? There's only yours that I can see. Take a look, oh, take a look inside my heart, at the fallen sky you've torn apart. All I want is the rising sun for us, for us.
So I've put a bit of a low pass filter at about 14K. I have not adjusted the gain or the line input gain. I've used a bit of EQ and no compression or gate. But what I might do, and this is one thing that this plugin does really well, is that you can insert an additional waves plugin. So as we've been using quite a lot of EQ boosting, and we're going to a lot of top end as well, we're going to find, if I can find it, the de-esser. So this loads in this effect in here, and I can also change it. So I'm going to bring this, if it does it. Come on, right, we'll set it before. I want the de-esser before the compressor, so I don't know why it's doing that. It's got mind of its own. So I'm going to open up the window, and now I'm going to monitor the sidechain, and I'm probably going to need about 8.5K. And with this, I can monitor the frequency and find the one that is and kind of reduce that. Right, is this going to, would help if I mute soloed the right one. So we're kind of reducing the S's, and that is before our EQ. So let's bring that back with everything else.
Save your breath, oh won't you save your breath for me? There's only yours that I can see. Take a look, oh take a look inside my...
So now, because I forgot that we're picture-in-picture, we have our 1073 for our preamp and our EQ. We have an 1176 for our compression, and then we're using a plugin that emulates a SSL mixing desk for monitoring it back as if we were mixing it off a board. Now, I do have seen that a lot of people tend to put reverbs on every single channel. And whilst that does work, it's not the most user-friendly way of doing it, and it's going to hammer your CPU. You wouldn't, if you were going to look at it in a conventional way, put a load of musicians in different rooms. You'd want them to sound like they're in the same room, playing their instruments at the same time. So when you're doing that, having something that, a reverb that's being used as a send rather than an insert, I can send, I've already created it here, the vocal reverb is sent from this fader and it goes into this one here. And on here, I have just a CLA reverb. So if I press play,
Save your breath, oh won't you save your breath for me? There's only yours that I can see. Take a look, oh take a look inside my heart.
the advantage of this is that I can control the fader. Well, I can control the auxiliary send into this vocal reverb put on a per channel basis, and because this is set post fader, if I pull the fader down, it will reduce the amount being sent to the reverb. So everything kind of stays relative, and also means if I wanted to, I can then send my harmonies
Save your breath,
to the same reverb.
save your breath for me. There's only yours that I can see.
So I'm using one reverb, but sending multiple tracks to it, which would again be how you would be using a mixing desk in a conventional sense. So if you were to look at my SSL, you will see that I have auxiliary sends, I have compression, and I have dynamics. Sorry, that compression and dynamics are the same thing. I have EQ and dynamics on a channel by channel basis. And I would do what I'm doing here with hardware. So I could use a 1073 and an 1176 at the recording side, and then use an SSL mixing desk to mix it afterwards. but you can do that too. I mean, yes, there's pros and cons to working in both. Yes, it's all very nice to have an SSL mixing desk, but obviously the cost in buying it and then the cabling is something to consider. Plugins, yes, I'm possibly suggesting that you're going to start using a fair few amount of plugins, but you can commit or freeze. So that's going to free up some of your CPU, but you don't need to worry about getting a really expensive preamp. As long as it's clean and quiet, you can add plugins, and I'll include in the description beneath a 10% off with Waves. I'm not in any way endorsed by Waves. Every plugin I've bought, every Waves plugin I own, I've purchased with my own money and stuff. There are other plugins that I have and I use, and we can talk about them at another point. But for for today's exercise and today's Technique Tuesday, this was a good way of being able to get them. And I think, to be fair, if you were to shop around, you'd probably be able to buy all three of those plugins for probably under £60, and you can use them again and again and again and again. So that is today's Technique Tuesday. So if you have any comments, write them in the section beneath. If you want me to do anything in particular, again, write them in the comments beneath. And we will see you next time on the next Technique Tuesday. Remember to smash that bell so you keep up to date with the stuff we're doing. And we will see you soon. Take care.